Hi, I'm Mr. Mullaney. This is the lesson recap of our United States Constitution lesson, the Constitutional Convention. These slides were designed by my student teacher, Mr. Colin Boyle. Okay, let's get into it. So they're in Philadelphia. They initially met to revise the articles. When you meet about something, it is not a neutral action. That's what Professor Maltzman said in my American politics class at George Washington University. Because you're meeting about it, that tells you that there's something wrong with it or that you consider something wrong with it, and it has no chance of surviving. They said these things aren't worth what the paper they're written on. We're getting rid of Articles of Confederation. You have the elite of American society there. You have slave owners, all white, all men, 55 delegates. They meet from May to September in nowadays Independence Hall in Philadelphia. Some absentees: Thomas Jefferson, who at the time was critical of it. He was the foreign minister of France. John Adams is representing us in Great Britain. Sam Adams and John Hancock refused to go, and Rhode Island did not send a delegation. However, Washington was there, and Washington was there. He became the president of the convention, and which really was just like calling on people, enforcing the parliamentary procedure. But his approval was huge in gaining it acceptance. So you had the Virginia plan. Madison advocated a plan that it had, long story short, the representation was by population. The big states would send more representatives than the small states. We call that, it's for large states, the large state plan. And the big thing you want to take out of it is that states with large populations would benefit. They say, hey, this is fair. Representation will be proportional. Virginia will have more votes than Rhode Island, and that's how it should be, right? But the small states say, well, now we're going to be in this strong central government where we could always be outvoted by the big states. What incentive do we have to join that? And so they submit the New Jersey plan, the small state plan, where there'd be it would be actually very similar to the Articles of Confederation in some ways, in which, each state has equal votes, and basically the state governments would control Congress. So you have two different views of how representation should be. Should be by population, which means the big states always outvote the small states, or should each state have a vote, which large states don't have much of an incentive to join that because they have less power proportionally compared to the small states, your Rhode Islands and your Delawares. So there's a great compromise, or the Connecticut Compromise, where the legislature will have two houses. In the United States Senate, each state gets two representatives no matter what. Today we have California, much bigger in population than, say, a Wyoming or a Delaware or a Rhode Island. And California has two senators, Wyoming has two senators, Delaware has two senators. However, in the House of Representatives, California has about 50-something representatives, and Wyoming and Delaware each have one. All right, so in the House of Representatives, you would have representation based on proportion. It is now 435, and that 435 is split up over the percentage of the population the state has. And we do the census every 10 years to determine that. And so there's a little Venn diagram that Mr. Boyle came up with for the Virginia and New Jersey plans, and where they overlap is that they both called for a strong national government with three branches. It was really the congressional representation, the proportions that you have there. The Constitution and slavery, the 3/5 Compromise. So one of our founding documents, this Constitution that's a beacon to other countries, something that we celebrate. I was in fourth grade in 1787, the 1987, not 1787, the 200th anniversary. We all memorized the preamble of the United States Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to, I'm not going to get into it. Maybe I don't remember it as well as I thought I did. 3/5 Compromise. This is for representation. Slaves, and they're referred to as other persons. Slaves will count when they do that congressional representation thing. They will count slaves as 3/5. Now, the slaves won't have any ability to participate in the political process. But what's also controversial is the taxes. So the slave states will owe 3/5 they will count for 3/5 as far as the taxes that are owed by each state to the national government. So that's how that works. It's 3/5 compromise. It essentially says that slaves are 3/5 of human beings. It's an awful thing, and it's part of our United States Constitution, or at least the beginning until slavery is banned. All right, government structure. You have a federal system where states and the national government both have authority. All right, that's how it works. Separation of powers. There are 3 branches. The judicial, which is the court system, the executive, which is the president. So the judicial interprets, the executive carries out laws, and who makes the laws? The legislative, that's the Congress. The idea is checks and balances, a system where no branch has too much power. We'll study that, how the different branches check each other and balance power with each other. We watched the Schoolhouse Rock video. In the links below, I'm going to put the SNL Executive Order Schoolhouse Rock video. The beginning is actually a nice recap of Schoolhouse Rock, and then they get into executive orders, which are something that any president can do. It's part of their carrying out the laws. Now, sometimes Congress says, no, you weren't authorized to do that by the laws we passed. But other times, the laws that Congress passes are broad, and presidents can take advantage of that. Anyway, you have to get a majority vote in the House of Representatives or Senate, and then it goes to the other body. The president then has to either sign it or veto it. If he vetoes it, and it's, sorry, gender-specific pronoun, but there's only been male presidents. If the president vetoes it, it goes back to the Congress, and if 2/3 of each house votes for it, then it's good. But if fewer than 2/3, then it is not good. And there's a nice little chart of checks and balances right there. Amending the Constitution, it's meant to be difficult. The fundamental structure of the government and the system is not meant to change radically. It's happened 26 times where 2/3 of both houses of Congress have voted for an amendment, and then 3/4 of the state legislatures have approved it. Once there was a situation where 2/3 of both houses of Congress did it, and then 3/4 of special state conventions ratified it. All right, voting for president, it's supposed to be the Electoral College, where people vote for people who will choose the president. That's evolved. That system has evolved. And so now you vote for electors committed to one president or another. And there very rarely are faithless electors who then cast their Electoral College vote and for someone who they're not committed to. So when you do it, you vote for electors for your state. And the way it works, it's a winner-take-all system. And this is nice proportionally as far as showing how the 2012 map took place. It doesn't matter if you win a state by everybody in the state or by one vote. If you win the state, you get all of the state's Electoral College votes. It's like everybody in the state voted for you. How do we determine that number, by the way? You take the amount of representatives in the House. So for California, it's 53. You add 2 senators. So the fewest a state will have is 3 for 1 member of the House and 2 senators. And you get the number of Electoral College votes. So Pennsylvania has 18 members of the House of Representatives. We also have 2 senators, just like any other state. And so we have 20 Electoral College votes. All right, I'm going to leave you with this. So tonight is the season finale of Pretty Little Liars. Pretty Little Liars is known for always leaving loose ends. They leave so many things unresolved. And so that when we talk about the Constitutional Convention, you want to think about loose ends. They did a much better job of tying up loose ends than the writers of Pretty Little Liars do. One loose end that needs to be tied up pretty quickly is a Bill of Rights. It's not in the original one. It will be there by 1791. So that's relatively quick. Another loose end is that they set up a presidential election system. The initial system doesn't work very well. In the election of 1800, they're going to have a real problem with that. That'll get tied up. The biggest loose end of all was slavery. The Founding Fathers really punted in a lot of ways on slavery. They did the 3/5 compromise, but they didn't really tackle it as an issue long term. And that caused a big problem, i.e. the Civil War. And with that, we are finished with our lesson recap of the Constitution lesson.